and at least 90% of them have been displaced from their homes in the year since Israel launched its war in Gaza after the October 7th attacks by Hamas. Those numbers according to the UN. One of those Palestinians is that man you saw there, Shaban Ahmed al-Dalu, who you just heard from in the video. Today is Shaban's 20th birthday. And a bunch of folks around the world got to know him through his posts on social media, on Instagram and YouTube. In addition to studying computer science and English, which he speaks quite well, Shaban would post photos of himself playing the guitar. He had dreams of studying abroad to become a doctor. He would volunteer in an open-air Palestinian medical clinic. And he even organized, like a lot of Palestinians have, he organized a GoFundMe campaign to raise the money that might secure his family's travel to safety in Egypt, something that's extremely expensive and extremely difficult to come by in the Gaza Strip. When the war began last year, he and his family of 7, you see them there, they fled their home in Gaza City. And as you heard him say, they had to move at least 5 times since then. There's been bombing and airstrikes and violence in all different regions throughout the Strip. So most recently, they had finally settled outside the Al-Aqsa hospital, but there were no shelters. So Shaban built one for his family.
I'm taking care of my family as I'm the oldest. I have 2 sisters and 2 little brothers and my parents. We live in a very hard circumstances, suffering from various things such as homelessness and limited food and extremely limited medicine.
Imagine being that white bread bitch who just went around with her stupid food TikTok influencer channel and got displaced and had to live in a tent for a year. How long do you think she'd last? As I've said, perhaps the most amazing experience I took away from going on this journey again with Jen when she ran for Congress was meeting all of these Muslims at their mosques and how genuinely appreciative of people they really are. And no matter how working class or upper class they are, they all see themselves as equal in the eyes of God when they walk into that mosque. How they have such a inner strength to live through all of this is amazing. And it hurts because I always try to put myself in the other person's shoes. What would I do? This young man had his whole life ahead of him, and he was going to do great things. And he was murdered. Murdered by the directive of our government, our State Department, and our supposed ally in the Middle East that isn't even a real nation. I hope that people will remember this young man. I know I will. He didn't ask for this. Hell, he probably could have gotten out of there. And Chris is right. I hope people are prepared for the level of terrorism that will come back to us as a result of this genocide. I often wonder if people realize that there is no end game. There's no exit strategy. There is nothing. This is just kill and kill until, I don't know, World War III. I've always said the danger of the liberal class knows no bounds, because if they're not being put in harm's way, they will sure as shit put others in harm's way. To even be slightly inconvenienced makes people of privilege in this country freak out beyond recognition. most notably white women in the suburbs, but you get my drift. We'll have different degrees of it and what we're willing to accept. But this poor kid is dead because we think that we control the world. And Israel believes in a apartheid state. And the growing anti-Semitism around the world is only going to get much, 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 much worse. And I can't say that I don't understand why, because I do. To be this naive at this point, you have to be a fucking moron, and you have to have your ass literally buried in the sand. We'll continue.
And the only things between us and the freezing temperature is this tent that we constructed by ourselves.
Now, this is one story of hundreds of thousands, right, that folks that have had to do this. And even in the tent camp, Shaban continued his studies. He often walked around outside to find an internet signal. And amid the just ghastly conditions and the constant shortages of food and medicine, he even donated his own blood to help the injured. 11 days ago, Shaban would require medical assistance of his own. He was injured in an Israeli airstrike on his mosque that's near the hospital. And in that strike, he suffered a head wound that required 11 stitches, his family said. He was recuperating in their tent on Monday when, for at least the sixth time this year, an Israeli airstrike targeted the hospital where Shaban and his family were staying. They were staying right outside it. I want to warn you, the images that follow are really disturbing. Witnesses captured the inferno outside the hospital after that airstrike. NBC News confirmed that the strike killed 5 people and it injured dozens more as the fire spread through a bunch of the structures that were out there. And the dead included Shaban. What you see here are the last moments of Shaban al-Dalou's life as he burned alive in his family's tent. An IV line still attached to his body. NBC News confirms his mother also died in that fire. The Israeli military said it executed a precise strike on terrorists, their words, operating in a, quote, command and control center next to the hospital. On his GoFundMe page, Shaban wrote, "My life has been turned upside down by the unyielding bombings and shelling. Once brimming with aspirations, I now face the harsh reality of displacement and uncertainty. In Gaza, dreams go to die. Each displacement leaves behind another fragment of our shattered souls. Time feels like it's stopped in Gaza, and we're stuck in a never-ending nightmare."
Why can't you do news like this all the time, Chris? This is what you call Pulitzer Prize-winning journalism. May the image of this young man be that, and not the image of him burning to death. That was him, with the 2 arms up in the air. Everyone looked at that photo and was horrified by it. Well, that's him. That's the person who burned to death. Not some old person waiting to die in a hospital, but an injured kid. And now he's dead. And dead in the worst way possible. There are many arguments as to what's the worst way to die. It's been universally determined the worst and most painful way to go is to burn to death. We're a sick country. And I do give a lot of blame to Chris Hayes because he did it for the money. Chris Hayes is known in private to be a very, very progressive individual. Unlike a lot of others, he's not a phony in his personal life. He actually does sympathize with the plight of the working class. But that sweet, sweet corporate cash that MSNBC pays him, which is in somewhere in that probably $5 to $7 million range every year. You have blood on your hands too, Chris. You may not want to hear that, but it's the truth. I am grateful that you did this clip, but you could have done this clip a year ago, and it might have had a greater impact. Now too many people just accept this for what it is. It's a genocide. I guess it's just the way it has to be. But let me assure you, I have seen messaging over the past few days. No joke. And I'm sure some of you have seen it too, and have said, a couple 100,000 Palestinians have to die in order for Trump to lose, then that's the price I'm willing to pay. Like I said, there's a reason why most people do not get involved in politics. They don't want any part of it because of shit like this and shit like the stuff people that are privileged liberals like to say. And they mean it. There's no bullshitting there. They really believe it. So if your intention is to cast your vote for Jill Stein and Butch Ware, raise your head high, vote proudly, and wear a sticker saying you voted and you voted for them. History will remember those that actually stood on principle when it was politically inconvenient to do so. That's where real courage comes from. Don't ever forget that.